My wife cheated on me with her childhood friend, blaming me for being greedy, and then gave our child up for adoption. I'm 37, my wife is 37, and we've been together for about 15 years, married for 10. Back when we were still dating, we were both really into the idea of having kids. I grew up in a big family, most of my siblings were younger, so I've always been good with children. My wife had always dreamed of a family with 3 or 4 kids since she was a little girl, so we were completely on the same page there. But as we got older, reality hit us hard. You start realizing that life doesn't always go the way you've planned. Once we got married, which was about 10 years ago, it became pretty obvious. We dated for 5 years before tying the knot, so we didn't feel the need to take things slow. We jumped straight into trying to conceive, but it just didn't work, and that was heartbreaking. When I say we tried everything, I mean everything. We even tried things we knew probably wouldn't work. But when you're that desperate for a baby, you go to any lengths. And spoiler alert, it's been 10 years, and still no baby. That's a big part of why I'm writing this now. Like most couples trying to have a child, we went through those moments where it seemed like maybe, just maybe, it had finally worked, only for her period to show up a few days late, dashing our hopes. There were actually 2 times when we got a positive pregnancy test, but both ended in miscarriage around 2 months in. That was devastating for both of us. I know I'm diving into a lot of history here, but I think it's crucial to understand just how much we both wanted a child. Before you ask, yes, we've seen countless doctors. I've had my fertility tested more times than I care to admit, and let's just say my little swimmers are doing just fine. My wife has gone through a ton of medical tests as well, but for the most part, the experts couldn't pinpoint why we couldn't conceive. We even tried IVF, but that failed too. Adoption and surrogacy crossed our minds, but we're a bit old-fashioned, and those options haven't really expired for us yet. At least not entirely. There's still time, so we aren't rushing to make any decisions until we're sure we can't have a child on our own. Another important factor in all this is how much pressure we've felt from our families. We both come from pretty traditional backgrounds, which is probably why we've always been so set on having kids of our own. But not being able to get pregnant has definitely backfired, especially with relatives who treat having children like it's a must-have for a happy life. Without kids, it's like you've failed at life somehow. I blame a lot of that on the strong religious beliefs in both our families. My wife, though, caught the brunt of it, especially from both sides of the family. Not that I got off easy. My male relatives loved throwing around dumb comments about how they've never seen a man in our family fail to put a baby in someone. Real classy, right? Anyway, I've gone through every test a guy can go through, and I'm more than convinced there's nothing wrong with me. But enough of that, let's get to the real story. My wife and I have always been pretty active in the bedroom. At first, it was because we were trying for a baby, but over time it just became a regular thing, even after we both started to accept that maybe it just wasn't in the cards for us. For me, though, I needed to know that I had done everything I could to have a child of my own. I didn't want to be 80 years old, wondering if I could have tried harder. Since we were intimate so often, it never really crossed my mind to suspect anything unusual, even on the rare occasions when we thought she might be pregnant. This time, she missed her period, and naturally we started to get a little excited, but we had to keep our expectations in check. After all, we'd been down this road before. Why pin all our hopes on one missed period? But then, when she missed the next one, my wife decided to take a pregnancy test. And wouldn't you know it? It was positive. Honestly, I was over the moon. Sure, there was a little voice in the back of my head reminding me that we'd been through miscarriages before. But that doubt wasn't as loud as I expected. I felt like staying positive and believing in this pregnancy might actually help it stick, even though deep down, I knew there were no guarantees. Still, hope was all we had, and for once it felt like we had a real chance. To my amazement, the pregnancy made it to the 5-month mark, and I don't think I've ever been happier in my life. We'd never gotten this far before, and while I was cautiously optimistic, a part of me never thought I'd see the day. My wife was ecstatic too, of course, and I was so relieved to see her like that. She had dealt with so much judgment from our families, and this felt like a giant middle finger to all of them. In fact, her relatives, who used to be so cold toward me, suddenly became much nicer. It sucked to realize their kindness was tied to us having a baby, but I wasn't about to complain. I take it where I could get it. Now, here's where things started to feel off. One night, we were watching a local TV show, and there was this plot about a woman who had cheated on her husband. Something about it just struck a chord with me. The episode was about a woman who cheated on her husband and ended up pregnant with her lover's baby. It's a show we watch regularly, but I noticed something off when my wife suddenly said she wanted to watch something else. She wasn't pushy about it, though, so when I asked why she didn't feel like watching, she chalked it up to being pregnant. A lot changes when a woman's expecting, so I didn't think too much of it at the time. I switched the channel and she seemed to calm down, but for the rest of the night, I caught her shooting me strange glances. Still, I didn't dwell on it. Things really started to feel strange when, just a few days later, the same episode came on again as a rerun. It was a weekend, and her reaction was almost identical. She suddenly didn't want to watch it, claiming the pregnancy was making her uncomfortable. This time, though, I started to feel like something was off. I asked her again if everything was okay, and she gave me the same excuse. But unlike the first time, she wasn't acting weird after that, or maybe I just wasn't paying as much attention. That's when my mind started racing. A day or two later, I talked to a good friend about the whole situation. He was the one who suggested that maybe my wife was acting weird because she had done what the woman in the episode did, cheated and gotten pregnant by someone else. At first, I thought it was a ridiculous idea. But the more he explained his theory, the more it started to make uncomfortable sense. The thing is, I didn't want to believe him. If he was right, it would mean that what should be the happiest moment of my life, finally having a child, was actually built on lies and betrayal. I don't know if I could handle that. After waiting so long for a baby, the thought of facing infidelity right now is unbearable. A part of me doesn't even want to dig deeper because I'm terrified of what I might find. So that's why I'm here. I've tried to lay out all the details of the situation, and I'm hoping some of you might have a theory about why that particular episode makes my wife so jumpy. Maybe it has nothing to do with the cheating storyline at all. Maybe she really is just struggling with pregnancy hormones. I'll stick around and check out the comments to see what you guys think. Edit. I noticed some people are asking for more details about her reaction to that episode, so I'll try to explain it better. When the show came on and the episode started, she settled in with her usual excitement, especially when it seemed like an episode we hadn't seen before. But as the plot points started to unfold, I noticed her excitement wasn't as obvious as it usually was. At first, I didn't think much of it because she had a valid reason for being a little off. However, about a minute or two into the episode, once it was clear it was a rerun, she realized which episode it was. That's when I noticed another change in her mood. This time, we didn't even get far enough to the part where it was obvious that the storyline involved infidelity. I didn't pay too much attention at first because I was still trying to figure out what was going on. I might have zoned out a little, to be honest, but I don't remember her acting this weird the first time we saw this episode. Then again, we didn't get to that part of the episode the first time around. Edit 2. Someone suggested I ask her directly. After 10 years of marriage, honesty should come easy, right? Well, all I can say is you've got a lot to learn. Edit 3. I've gone through about 90% of the comments, but they keep coming in, so I'll have to call it a day for now. I've seen a lot of supportive messages and advice. I'll figure out my next move soon and let you all know. Thanks for sticking with me through this. It seems like I've got a recipe for drama simmering on the back burner. Honestly, it's like my wife is more eager to change the channel than a politician dodging tough questions. Who would have thought a TV show could stir up so much? It almost feels like she's trying to avoid watching her own life play out on screen. Forget reality TV, our living room is where the real drama's happening. Cue the suspense music, because this is shaping up to be one heck of a cliffhanger. Update 2. This isn't exactly the update I wanted to give, but I owe it to you all to let you know how things went. There was a lot of good advice in the comments of my first post, and I really tried to come up with a plan based on some of your suggestions. But in the end, my emotions got the best of me, and things completely fell apart. Considering that I'm now questioning the paternity of a child I've wanted for over a decade, I hope you can understand why I lost control. I'm not proud of it, but I also don't think anyone can blame me for reacting the way I did. The plan I had in mind was to borrow her MacBook and check her messages, maybe even look at her social media. I figured her laptop would give me a little more time if I needed to dig deeper, but it never got that far. I was trying to figure out an excuse for why I couldn't just use my own laptop, but honestly, I didn't even get that far. My wife and I have always been pretty honest with each other, and all the stress I was feeling from overthinking just got to me. So, I finally decided to ask her straight up. Looking back, I realize how stupid that was, and I keep kicking myself over it. But back then, I was desperate to get that weight off my chest and just find out the truth. So yeah, I asked her directly. I think the way it came out was something like, why were things different this time? We didn't do anything different, so how did it work this time? I know the test said I'm fine, but I can't stop wondering if the baby is really mine. Needless to say, she lost it. I tried to calm her down because I was worried about how her anger might affect the baby. But obviously, I just accused her of cheating on me and trying to pass someone else's baby off as mine, so yeah, her reaction was pretty justified. I feel like complete crap every time I replay it in my head. It was a mess. Eventually, she did calm down, but then she told me I couldn't stay at home that night. Again, I felt like that was fair. Honestly, based on how genuine her reaction seemed, I really think I messed up. It has to be my baby. I just hope she'll be able to forgive me. There's only one thing that still leaves me feeling a bit uneasy, though. As I was grabbing my stuff to stay somewhere else, I overheard her talking to someone on the phone in this quiet, hushed tone. The problem is, I couldn't tell who it was or make out anything she was saying. By the time I went back into the room, she was off the phone, so I couldn't ask. That part's been eating away at me a little, but I'm trying not to let my paranoia get the best of me again. I saw where that got me last time. This all happened 2 days ago. I'm spending my second night out of the house now, and honestly, I decided to write all of this down as a way to let my emotions out. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say, though I'm kind of worried your advice will just lead to more overthinking. But hey, I can handle it. Let it rip. I'm just waiting until my wife's ready to let me back home. Edit. This is what I was afraid of. Someone mentioned that maybe her anger was just a performance, and kicking me out is a way for her to move her lover in for a few days. For some reason, I don't think that's the case. At least, I don't believe she'd actually go that far. Right? Now I can't help but overthink the whole situation. I'm wondering if, with me out of the house, she's engaging more openly with him. It's not exactly a fun thought to have. Edit 2. So, from what I've gathered, the general consensus is that her outburst of rage doesn't necessarily mean she's innocent. Apparently, I'm too trusting. But she's my wife, right? I feel like I should trust her to some extent. Still, I see the point a lot of you are making. I've had a partner cheat on me before, back when I was much younger, and yeah, gaslighting can come pretty naturally to some people. So, I'm starting to agree. I was probably too quick to take her anger as the answer I was hoping for. Edit 3. This might be a longer update, but it should be the last one for a while. I'm finally back home after being out for 4 days. I know that sounds like a long time, but honestly, I'm just glad to be back. There was a lot of awkwardness at first, but things got back to normal pretty quickly. And once they did, I made sure to keep my emotions in check this time. I decided to go through with my plan and asked for her laptop, trying not to raise any suspicion. She handed it over without a second thought. The problem? I found nothing. I dug deep into her messages, especially with people I didn't know, and there wasn't a single thing that seemed off. I checked her Facebook too, but couldn't get into her Instagram since it wasn't logged in. Everything looked squeaky clean. The only thing that caught my attention was how often she talks to this guy named Ryan. But even after scrolling through their messages, I didn't find anything inappropriate. And here I am, overthinking again. Now I'm wondering if things are too clean. Like maybe she deleted anything questionable between her and Ryan before handing me the laptop. The frustrating part is, I don't have any way to prove it unless she slips up somehow. So, for now, I'm just going to keep my eyes open. But honestly, I really want to be wrong. I don't know if I can handle the heartbreak of finding out that I'm about to become a father, only to have it ripped away from me. I'm scared of what I might turn into if that happens. I just hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. First off, props for trying to pull off the whole sneaky laptop plan. But let's be real. Playing detective in your own marriage? That's like trying to juggle flaming swords while riding a unicycle. It's bound to blow up in your face. And let's not even get started on that awkward 4-day break from home. I'm guessing it felt more like a stressful episode of Survivor, Marriage Edition than a romantic getaway. But hey, you made it back in one piece, so that's something, right? Now, about this whole Ryan situation, it's turning into a real nail-biter now. I mean, who knows, maybe Ryan's just a really great listener who shares my wife's love of cat videos and conspiracy theories. Though let's be real, that's pretty unlikely. Deep down, I think I know exactly who Ryan is. Update 3. So, I messed up again big time. And honestly, I don't even know who to blame besides myself. It was another case of me spiraling because of all the uncertainty. I'm the kind of person who, if there's even a 10% chance something might be a lie, I start to obsess over it until I can get a clear answer. And once I started doubting whether the baby was mine, that's when everything started to unravel. I could blame my friend for planting that seed, but honestly, most of you agreed with him, so I guess I was just too blind to see it for myself. Anyway, I'll cut to the chase. I ended up talking to my wife about everything again. I knew it could go horribly wrong, so I tried to frame the conversation in a way that didn't sound like I was accusing her outright. I just needed reassurance. At that point, simple honesty wasn't enough for me anymore. I needed something conclusive so I could get back to living my life without this cloud of doubt hanging over me. So, I asked her to take a DNA test. Yeah, big flipping mistake. We were sitting in the living room, and after I explained everything, during which she sat quietly and didn't explode like she did last time, I brought up the idea of an in utero DNA test. I'd done some research and found out we didn't have to wait for the baby to be born to find out if I was the father. All it would take was a blood sample from her. I laid it all out for her, explaining my concerns and where my head was at. She stayed completely silent the whole time. Didn't say a word until I finally asked, "What do you think?" Yeah, it didn't go well. She just stood up without saying anything and walked into our bedroom. From the sound of it, I knew she was packing clothes. Asking for a DNA test is never going to be easy for a guy, I get that now. But is there even a right way to do it? Because I sure didn't find it. I suppose asking for a paternity test can shake even the happiest of marriages. And now I see why. I get why she reacted the way she did, but at the same time, I wish she could understand where I was coming from. I needed reassurance. It felt like the only way to stop myself from going crazy because, after waiting so long to have a child, this sudden success just freaked me out. I know it sounds stupid and unfair to her, but that's where my mind was. I wanted this baby so badly, but the doubt crept in. I guess deep down, I feared that things couldn't have finally just clicked into place, that after all this time something had to be off. And now I'm paying the price for those fears. It felt like everything had finally lined up perfectly, but I still needed that reassurance. Yeah, I know, it makes me sound insecure. I've already told myself that 1,000 times. After I asked for the DNA test, she eventually left the house. I tried to stop her, but she just raised her hand in my face, and I let her go. That moment hit me like a punch in the gut. Even an idiot could have told me this wouldn't end well, but it was so impulsive I didn't think it through. And now she's gone. She hasn't answered my calls for a week. I did manage to talk to her sister, though, and I know she's staying with her, so at least I know she's safe. But her whole family hates me now. Every time I've had any brief contact with them, all I get is angry words and curses thrown at me. What stings the most is that I'm finally about to become a dad, and I've managed to sour the whole experience. The final blow? She texted me saying she wants a divorce. I haven't had the guts to respond. I'm in no rush to push things in that direction, and I doubt I'll be served with divorce papers anytime soon, especially with a baby on the way. I mean, who wants to spend money on that mess when we're about to have a newborn? So yeah, if you were hoping for an update where I come out vindicated, having caught her cheating with her fitness instructor or something, this isn't that story. The truth is, I screwed up, plain and simple. The moral of the story? Think before you do something rash like I did. Or at least try to find other ways to get the truth. When I didn't find anything on her phone, that should have been my sign that there was nothing there. But instead, I pushed for the DNA test, and that was like bringing a sledgehammer to a game of Jenga. Sure, you might get some answers, but you're guaranteed to bring the whole tower crashing down. And now, my tower of marital bliss is in ruins. Though, if I'm being honest, it feels like that fuse was lit long before I made things worse. But let's not forget the real kicker. I want a divorce. Ouch. It's like my life turned into a country song overnight, complete with heartache, misery, and a disapproving set of in-laws. But then again, why would she be asking for a divorce unless there's someone else ready to take care of her and the baby? Whoever's baby that is. Update 4? I can't believe I'm back here posting again. It's been about a year since my last update. For those who don't remember, I came here with a story about finally conceiving with my wife after over 10 years of trying. I basically accused her of cheating because I started reading into every little sign and overthought my way into a separation. Well, there's a huge update and an unexpected conclusion to this whole mess. Honestly, I can't even believe how much my life has been turned upside down since then. There might be some value in overthinking, but at the same time, I can't say I'm entirely happy with how everything played out. So here it is. After everything that happened, my wife and I stayed separated until our baby was born. It was a really bittersweet time for me. On one hand, I was so overjoyed to finally hold my baby in my arms. There's nothing like it, especially when it's your first child. But on the other hand, I knew the divorce was looming, and that custody battles were going to follow. I had always imagined giving my child a wholesome, complete family, but now it felt like everything was going to be split right from the start. That part hit me hard. Thankfully, there was a bit of a truce in those early months. My wife let me see our daughter whenever I wanted, and I really appreciated that. She was so beautiful, and those first few moments with her were magical. My wife and I didn't really discuss our situation much. It was like this unspoken tension hanging in the air. I knew it would come up eventually, probably once the euphoria of having our child settled down. When our daughter was about to turn 1, that's when she served me with the divorce papers. Honestly, it came out of nowhere. We'd never really brought the topic back up, and I felt like she waited for a moment when I was finally feeling a bit of peace and off guard before dropping the bomb on me. It was brutal. There's no way to describe how much it hurts knowing you won't be in your child's life as much as you want to be, especially after waiting so long to have her. The thought of fighting over holidays, weekends, and all that mess, it was gut-wrenching. I also worried about the impact it would eventually have on our daughter. But here's where things start to shift. For a while, I took more of a passive role in taking care of my daughter. Mostly because going to my sister-in-law's house, where my wife and daughter were living, felt like walking into enemy territory. Everyone treated me like I was some kind of monster, and honestly, I felt like I deserved it after everything. But it was still really tough to deal with. Despite that, I powered through because seeing my little girl was worth it, no matter how hostile things were. Then one weekend, something unexpected happened. My wife was invited to a wedding in a nearby city, and I volunteered to watch our daughter for the day. She pushed back pretty hard at first, but since her sister was also going to the wedding, they eventually agreed it was convenient to leave her with me. They knew I wasn't going to do anything crazy or run off with her, so they relented. This was the first time I'd been left alone with my daughter for an extended period, and as I looked at her, all those old thoughts came rushing back. My stupid paranoia, the overthinking that put us in this situation in the first place. It all came flooding in. And there I was, holding my little girl, realizing just how much my own insecurities had wrecked everything. Then it suddenly hit me. I could finally get the conclusive proof I'd been needing. I'd be able to find out, once and for all, if the little girl I'd been holding was really my daughter. For about an hour, I fought with myself over whether to go through with it. Part of me felt like I was about to open Pandora's box, but the other part knew this was the only way to put my mind at ease. So, I got in the car and headed straight to the clinic. When I arrived, they explained that the results would be purely informational. They wouldn't be legally admissible in court. But that was fine by me. I wasn't looking to build a legal case. I just needed peace of mind. I showed my ID, had a cheek swab done, and they swabbed my daughter too. When it was all over, they told me it would take about a week to get the results. That week felt like a lifetime. My daughter went back to her mother the next day after the wedding, but I was stuck waiting, feeling like I was going to lose my mind. I even called the clinic a couple of times before the week was up, hoping the results were ready early. I was desperate for closure, whatever the outcome. If the test confirmed I was her father, I'd be ready to drop my pride and beg my wife to take me back. I wouldn't have cared about being right or wrong. I just wanted my family. Finally, the day came. I went to pick up the results, hands trembling as I opened the envelope. It was negative. I wasn't the father. I don't know how to put into words how I felt holding that paper. It was like I was awake, but my body just stopped functioning. I couldn't react. I was completely numb. The emotions running through me were so complicated. On one hand, I realized that all the victimization I'd gone through wasn't justified. I had been right all along. As weak as my suspicions may have seemed, they were valid in the end. But did being right really matter when the truth was this devastating? I had been gaslighted. My in-laws treated me like a villain, and I'd spent my daughter's first year playing a sideline role in her life. But the hardest part hit me after a minute or two. This wasn't just about me and my wife anymore. The little girl I had thought of as my daughter wasn't mine. I had longed for a child more than anything, and the baby I had been so overjoyed to welcome into the world wasn't mine. The woman I thought I'd spend my life with had been carrying another man's child. Sure, maybe I had been the problem all along when it came to conceiving, but none of that mattered now. It didn't justify the pain of having the joy of fatherhood ripped away from me. I went home and broke down completely. I cried like I've never cried before, and I drank just to dull the pain, but nothing really helped. I don't think I've ever drunk that much in my life. It was awful. I basically shut myself in for about a week, just trying to process everything. I can't even put into words what I was feeling. So many dark thoughts kept circling in my head. Honestly, I wanted to take all that anger and pain and throw it at my wife. I mean, after what I just discovered, can you really blame me? It was a lot to handle. But enough of the woe is meek stuff. I finally contacted a divorce lawyer. I'd been dragging my feet on signing the papers for nearly a month at that point, just not ready to deal with it. But after finding out the truth about the girl I thought was my daughter, I knew I had to get serious. I needed to at least clear my name and vindicate myself. I found myself stuck on one big question, though. Should I stay in this little girl's life? I'd fallen in love with her, and I know a lot of people might say, what's the point of raising another man's child? But it's easier said than done when you've been there from day one. You don't just switch those feelings off. So, when the divorce proceedings finally kicked off, I knew things wouldn't be easy. My wife and her lawyer probably thought they were going to walk in and paint me as this insecure husband who had accused his wife of cheating over and over. What they didn't know was that I had something up my sleeve. My lawyer submitted a petition for a legal paternity test, and I'll never forget the look on my wife's face when she heard that. It was like her whole world froze in that moment. That image will be burned into my memory forever. My lawyer even dropped a little hint that I'd already done an informational test, which led us to this request. My wife's face said it all. She looked like she wanted to leap across the table and throttle me. All I could do was sit there and smile, because for once, I felt like I'd won. Now, don't get me wrong. This was the kind of situation where there wasn't really a win, but seeing her reaction, that was the best I was going to get. Her lawyer tried to fight the paternity test request, but there's only so much you can argue when the truth is on the line. If you're confident you haven't been unfaithful, why would you fight so hard against a simple paternity test? Eventually, she gave in, and so did I. Our daughter was taken to have her sample collected at an accredited facility, and another sample was taken from me. And just like before, the results came back the same. I wasn't the father. Even though I'd prepared myself for it, it still hurt just as much as the first time. A small part of me had secretly hoped that maybe this time, the test would show something different. But nope, she couldn't even look me in the eye after that. Everything she'd put me through, the gaslighting, making me feel like I was a terrible partner for suspecting her of infidelity. All of it came crashing down in that moment. Maybe I was wrong for accusing her, but in the end I was right. The entire divorce, I realized, was her way of covering her tracks and avoiding the truth that I had finally uncovered. Well, covering her tracks didn't really matter in the end. After that revelation, the truth was bound to come out, so I guess her head start didn't do much good. I had more than enough text messages to show how she almost drove me insane, calling me crazy, insulting me for even suggesting she'd cheat. I kept every message from my in-laws too, all of them treating me like some kind of pariah. But now it was clear, I didn't deserve to go through any of that. When the final judgment came, she got absolutely nothing. The judge was pretty sympathetic and even said that if the child had been mine, he probably would have ordered child support. But since I had no legal responsibility, there was nothing he could do that might even hint at rewarding her sleazy behavior. I was tempted to let her keep the car, which was still in my name, but I just couldn't. Not after everything she'd put me through. She has family to support her, but this was a woman who now had no house, no car, and nothing substantial in terms of finances. And she had a baby on top of all that. Life wasn't quite as cushy as it had been for her a few years ago. As for the little girl I thought was my daughter, by the time everything wrapped up, she was nearly 2 years old. It wasn't an easy decision, but I had to let her go. It hurt like hell, and it still does. The betrayal of believing I finally had the child I'd always wanted was too much to bear. Keeping her in my life would have been a constant reminder of that pain. Even if I had chosen to adopt her as my own, I knew it would have been an emotional battle I couldn't win. I'm sure there are people out there who'll disagree with my choice, but I had to think about my sanity. The child's real father is out there somewhere, and hopefully he'll step up and take responsibility. I never figured out exactly who her real father was, though I suspect it might have been that Ryan guy I saw her texting with. But I don't know for sure, and frankly, I'm not interested in finding out. I'm eager to close that chapter of my life. Once the divorce was finalized, I made sure to send a copy of the paternity test to every single person who knew my ex-wife well. I included a little message, especially for all the in-laws who had come for my throat. It was more tasteful than they deserved, but I felt a certain satisfaction in finally proving them wrong. Now that it's over, I don't feel like I really won, but I am glad I came out the other side with the truth. I don't have to live a life that's a lie, and maybe one day I'll find someone who's genuinely better for me. Who knows? There's a certain satisfaction in knowing that my ex-wife is basically starting from square one. Honestly, she deserves worse for what she did. But with a kid involved, I don't want her daughter to get caught in the middle of our mess. As much as I want to detach from my ex, I wouldn't want her child to suffer any more than she already has. Anyway, a big thank you to everyone who's supported me through all this. It's been a wild ride, and I'm just relieved to finally be able to move forward. Thanks to everyone who stuck around. I'm relieved to finally be at the end of this journey, and all I can say is this: trust your gut. When something feels off, there's probably a reason. It's not worth beating yourself up, doubting your instincts when deep down you know you're right. I'm glad I followed mine because for the first time in what feels like forever, I actually feel free. After a year of emotional gymnastics, it's nice to feel just a little bit good again. You spend months agonizing, sweating bullets over those DNA test results, and when you finally get them, surprise, surprise, you're not the father. But why stop there, right? Not content with just dropping that paternity bombshell, you go full Avenger mode, unleashing the fury of the betrayed. You send those DNA results to everyone in your ex-wife's circle, serving up a piping hot dish of revenge to her and her in-laws. Ah, sweet justice. At least now I can rest easy, knowing I was right all along. Nothing quite says victory like being vindicated in front of your ex's entire social circle. Am I right? So here's to trusting your gut, even when it leads you down the darkest, most twisted paths. Cheers, buddy, you've earned it. And that's my story. What do you make of it? Let me know below. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride. If you liked the story, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on the next one. See you next time.